Breaking news, Paul George just signed a maximum contract extension with the Los Angeles Clippers that will guarantee him as much as $226 million over the next 5 seasons. That is absolutely insane. Because of course, with this extension, we have to ask the question, is Paul George worth this much? What are the Clippers thinking? Are they insane? Have they momentarily lost their minds, or does this somehow make sense? Well, what's up guys, Mike here, and yes, today we are talking about Paul George. Today we are talking about his massive 5-year, $226 million contract extension with the Los Angeles Clippers. Because normally when NBA news breaks, when Shams or Woj or someone tweets out something, NBA Twitter and Reddit might come to some kind of consensus, but I'm not sure I've ever seen all of NBA Twitter agree on the exact same thing. That is that Paul George's extension is absolutely crazy. And of course, we are going to get into the reasons as to why this probably is crazy as this video goes on. Trust me, we are going to talk about that, but for now, I do want to play devil's advocate here, because I'm sure if you turn on the TV right now and look at ESPN, I'm sure if you look at Twitter, I'm sure if you look at Reddit, I'm sure if you look basically anywhere, you are going to find people hating on this Paul George deal. And there is good reason for that, but again, playing devil's advocate here, let's focus on 2 things. Because for the short term, this deal could end up working out for the Clippers as long as Kawhi Leonard resigns. That is basically the main thing that Clippers fans are hanging on to right now. In fact, if you head on over to the Clippers subreddit, you will actually see that with this news, most of their fans are happy about this sign. They believe that Kawhi is going to re-sign with the Clippers. They believe that Paul George is going to rebound and have a better season next season. And again, we're playing devil's advocate here, so let's lay out the best case scenario for the Clippers. Because remember here, the Los Angeles Clippers do owe the Oklahoma City Thunder about 100 first-round picks at this point. Now, obviously, I am exaggerating, but they do owe a ton of first-round picks. In fact, the Clippers actually owe the Thunder their 2026 first-round pick. That means that right now, no matter what, the Clippers are locked in on winning now. They are not going to be able to build through the draft. They were not going to be able to build through free agency if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard both left this offseason. As soon as they traded all of those first-round picks for Paul George, they were committing to win now. This is very, very similar to the Brooklyn Nets situation when they traded a bunch of first-round picks for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. However, there is of course a big difference here, and that is that both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are still in their primes. When the Nets made the trade for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, both of those players were on their tail end of their careers, and thus, understandably, that deal completely backfired in their faces. Now, looking at the Clippers and their current situation, they are trying to make sure that the same thing does not happen to them, because the Brooklyn Nets were basically irrelevant for around 5 seasons of the NBA, and if the Clippers were to lose Paul George and Kawhi Leonard this offseason, that is what would happen to the Clippers. They would become irrelevant. They would become one of the worst teams in the NBA with no future in place. So by signing Paul George, at least the Clippers are making sure that they have an all-star level talent for the foreseeable future. And before we continue, guys, I'm excited to announce that this video is sponsored by Raycon. Now, Raycon is a brand of wireless earbuds that, in my opinion, are the best on the market. The reason I say this is that the price of Raycons is about half the price of other earbuds on the market, and when it comes to sound, they sound just as incredible as the other top brands you might know. Now guys, Raycons make a great holiday gift because it's something that anyone can use every single day, whether it's for work or for play at home or on the go. Raycon actually sent me their everyday E25 model. They told me that this is their best model yet, and I've got to say, I definitely agree. Now personally, with other earbuds, I've always had a problem with them falling out of my ears as I do things like exercise. With these Raycons, I've never had that problem at all. Plus, they are extremely comfortable and they charge to give you 6 hours of playtime. Something that I think is huge because I hate having to constantly charge things. And on top of everything, guys, Raycon's being very generous for the holidays. They are offering all of you guys 15% off right now. That means you can save big on gift shopping, so go click the link in my description or go to buyraycon.com/MikeKorzemba and get 15% off your Raycon purchase. If my opinion is not enough for you guys, well, J.R. Smith feels the same way. He personally has stated that he loves Raycons, he wears them all the time. So again, guys, go to buyraycon.com/MikeKorzemba, get 15% off your order. Again, that link is in the description, and trust me when I say, guys, Raycon earbuds are amazing. You are going to love them. At this point, I want to remind everyone that is getting very angry in the comment section. We are playing devil's advocate here. We are just talking best case scenario for the Clippers. And of course, that best case scenario also includes Paul George rebounding this season, and it includes Kawhi Leonard re-signing signing in the offseason. Now, with Paul George rebounding, we really have to ask ourselves the question, did Paul George and Kawhi Leonard learn their lesson last season? Because in recent news, we've seen Paul George state that the Clippers basically did not practice last year. That, of course, is not going to contribute to a winning atmosphere. In fact, it is definitely the reason why the Clippers completely choked in the playoffs. As Paul George mentioned when he was talking about the Clippers not practicing, when you bring together a bunch of guys that haven't played together, there are going to be some kinks to work out. There are going to be some problems that arise on the court. So if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard learn from their mistakes, if they stop being divas, because as you probably know, we've also seen that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both were able to control practices, that both had special privileges that other Clippers players didn't have. If Paul George and Kawhi Leonard set aside their egos, then the Clippers could have a big rebound season, and Paul George himself can prove everyone wrong. I say this because in the 2019 season, that was just 2 seasons ago now, guys, Paul George was a legitimate MVP candidate. He averaged 28 points per game, he averaged 8.2 rebounds per game, he averaged 2.2 steals per game. He was seen as a legitimate top-tier first option on offense, and on top of that, he was seen as a great wing defender. Now, of course, after this season with the Clippers, everything, and I mean everything, has changed. We, of course, have heard it all. We've seen all the memes. We've seen all of Paul George's horrible shots. We've heard the nickname Pandemic P. Fans of the NBA, understandably, do not trust Paul George. They just think he's not a player that's going to be able to rise up in the playoffs and help your team win a championship. Now, with that in mind, I would like to remind everyone that as a younger player, when he was playing for the Pacers, Paul George was seen as a clutch playoff performer. So with all of this said, it would not surprise me at all next season if Paul George did become a much improved player on the court. I think the talent for him is there, and since he has fully committed himself to the Clippers at this point, since he said he wants to retire as a Clipper, I think he is going to try to be much more of a role model to his teammates. I think he is going to try to be much more of a leader. Personally, I think he's going to leave the diva stuff behind him and go back to the Paul George that we knew before this. Now, it is at this point in this video where things are going to turn, and we're going to be realistic, because I do understand right away that returning to the Paul George before this does mean that he would be returning to being a loser in the playoffs. Yes, he had some good seasons with the Pacers, but with the Thunder in 2018 and 2019, with Russell Westbrook on his team, Paul George could not even advance past the first round of the playoffs. In fact, in the 2019 playoffs, as we all know, the Blazers took them out in 5 games. And so that brings up the biggest thing we have to talk about in this video, and that is the Clippers are taking a massive risk here, because yes, they do owe a ton of their first round picks to the Thunder, but is paying Paul George a maximum contract really the answer here? Honestly, the only reason why that answer might be yes is because the Clippers put themselves in a situation where they have no choice. They put themselves in a situation where they let their team culture get so bad, so toxic, that the rest of the league practically has been making fun of them since they lost in the playoffs. And now the Clippers have to give Paul George a max contract, because if they don't, they might have watched as Paul George and Kawhi Leonard both left this offseason, and they might not have had another all-star caliber player until like 2027. On top of this, again, the Clippers are banking on Paul George stepping up here. We have no reason to believe that Kawhi Leonard is going to be loyal to the Clippers if Paul George sucks. Kawhi has already left the Spurs. Kawhi left the Raptors after winning a championship. If the Clippers underachieve in the playoffs yet again next season, I would bet a lot of money that Kawhi Leonard is going to leave. At the end of the day here, in the 2025 season, when Paul George is going to be 35 years old, the Los Angeles Clippers are going to be paying him around $48.8 million. So yes, Clippers fans, I understand you guys feel like you have no choice but to re-sign Paul George, but the thing is, your front office gave all of your first round picks to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and now it's very possible that the Clippers are going to be paying a price for that move for a very long time. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. Again, I cover news like this whenever it breaks, and I have an absolutely great video coming out tomorrow. I can't wait to post it. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much for watching. You're awesome. We all know it, and as always, have an awesome day, guys, and cue that music. If you're still here while the music is cued, here are 2 videos I think you are definitely going to enjoy. Make sure to click on one of them. Again, I know you're gonna love it, and other than that, have a great day and peace.